Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Looks like we are live. Let me just wait for a few seconds to see if you are able to join us. I see you're in the chat. Yes, here you are. Hello everyone. Thank you so much for being with us today. Because today, for the first time, I have a very special guest. This is someone who is already special to me. I'm not sure if some of you came across Paladin from the Whiteheads media. That is a channel I came across about 5 years ago. And I want to share a personal story first before I introduce Paladin. Well, this is actually my form of introduction of Paladin, because as I was going through the Schmovit experience in United States in Comey, California, I came across Paladin and Whitehead's media group. I was trying to understand what's going on, connect the dots, and imagine having this moment when at once everything comes to you. So you're receiving so much information that your brain has to really process it and not get overwhelmed. But what really struck me from those videos, because you don't see Paladin and you're not going to see Paladin and just accept the fact, but you're going to hear his voice, was not just the tone of his voice that brought some sense of trust and interest, but the information that he was providing. I don't know if you came across Paladin. I think some of you did. And if you haven't, here he is. This is someone who I very much appreciate. I want to thank you officially, and I haven't yet, for all the work that you put into what you're doing and in that channel, and for being there for many of us all around the world who are listening to you. We're gonna free flow today with a lot of topics that I barely know that much about, but Paladin knows a lot. So I might sound a little bit ignorant sometimes, and this is not because I'm disrespectful, it's just because I haven't gained as much knowledge in those topics. So welcome to my channel. First and foremost, very honored that you came out from the darkness and are joining me here today.
Well, thank you, Ania. I'm honored to be here and humbled that you reached out to me to come on your show.
So there is a website you can already find down below the live stream, as well as the link to Paladin's YouTube channel. And I hope you will be posting new videos soon, because you haven't been for a while. And I know that probably you will explain why. I think what I would like to start this video with, there are several topics we will go through. I definitely want to go through JFK files, because this is a topic very close to your heart personally, and I know this from what you told me off the camera here. But I want to start with something else, and I prepared this video for all of us. It's a short clip, but I want us to really listen, pay attention to the surroundings behind the President of the United States, and then I will ask Paladin my first question. So I hope that's okay. Let's go to the video now.
Today's ceremony, however, has very special meaning, because today we are not merely transferring power from one administration to another or from one party to another, but we are transferring power from Washington, D.C., and giving it back to you, the people. For too long, a small group in our nation's capital has reaped the rewards of government while the people have borne the cost. Washington flourished but the people did not share in its wealth. Politicians prospered, but the jobs left and the factories closed. The establishment protected itself, but not the citizens of our country. Their victories have not been your victories. Their triumphs have not been your triumphs. And while they celebrated in our nation's capital, there was little to celebrate for struggling families all across our land. That all changes starting right here and right now, because this moment is your moment. It belongs to you.
Paladin, here is my first question. Can you explain to me and my audience what is the difference between the Republic and US corporation, and is President Trump restoring the Republic?
Wow. Okay. That's exactly what he's talking about here. He's talking about restoring the republic. The the U.S. government, in essence, became a corporation in 1871. We had to borrow Lincoln had to borrow a lot of money for World War or for the Civil War, and after it was over, the Rothschild family said, "You guys got to pay us back." That wasn't Lincoln at that point, but anyway, the deal that was struck was that they had to form a corporation, and the Rothschilds wanted the labor of the United States citizens in the form of taxes as collateral for the loans. So we have been a corporation. Our government has been a corporation since 1871, almost, what is that, 150 years. So Trump's talking about restoring the republic. And this is not a well-known fact by any means. Most researchers that have gone back and looked at this understand what we're talking about. But if you do a Dun and Bradstreet on any of the departments of the government, you'll find a Dun and Bradstreet, and you can't get a Dun and Bradstreet unless you're a corporation. So, but there's a lot of work to be done to do that. You have to make the transition back to the republic. You've got to transfer all the assets back to the republic from the corporation. And I think what he's going to do is he's just basically going to bankrupt the corporation, and everything's going to be transferred. One thing that it appears, the timeline for that appears to be possibly next July 4th, because that will be our 250th year celebration of the founding of our country. And when he announced that there was going to be a Doge with, at that point, it was Musk and Ramaswamy, and this was before he took office in January, he said he was going to give them 18 months. So if you project out 18 months, that's July of next year. So that's what we hope's happening.
It's amazing. So what is the difference between Republic and corporation? What the Republic looks like? What's the main difference?
Well, it's the way in which the government is operated. The problem is, the main problem and the difference right now is the fact that the corporation's in debt. And so that changes the whole landscape. The government per se is not operating freely. If it was a republic, it would be operating freely, but it's not because of the debt. So the banking system has to be completely destroyed. Essentially, we need a new banking system, because we weren't ever meant to pay taxes. That came in 1913, and coincidentally, the Federal Reserve came in 1913. So that's basically has enslaved the American people. So the government at this point, if you go to read the Constitution, the only departments of the government were supposed to be the military and the border patrol, or the border, protecting the border, and then regulating interstate commerce. So everything that's been created since then is a corporate creation. The FBI, the CIA, Homeland Security, the Department of Education, ATF, all of them. It's all a corporation creation. So hopefully most of those departments will go away. And what we're seeing right now is, with Trump instituting Doge, we're seeing the dismantling of that in real time. That's exactly what they're doing. So they're going to dismantle that. But the first thing they're doing is they're showing us the waste. They're showing us where the money is going. They're looking at Social Security, and I forget how many people that they're paying that, they're over 100 years old, over 150 years old. Okay, these people don't exist, but somebody is getting that money. That money's going someplace. When they looked at USAID, which was really the first department that they looked at, I mean, we had, I don't know, $50 million for condoms in Gaza. I mean, it was just ridiculous things. Well, that's what the books say. That's what the records say. Wait till they trace that money and see whose hands it actually went into. Because all you have to do is you got to just sit back, watch TV, see who is out there protesting this every single day. Okay. I mean, they are putting their hand up and saying, I'm guilty, I'm guilty, I'm guilty. I mean, who in their right mind doesn't want this? Who doesn't want the audit of the government? Because we've never had that. I mean, and it's what's so interesting about this is Obama created Doge. He actually did create Doge back in 2014 or whatever it was. And so Trump has just taken that, and see, it's already been funded. So Trump just used it against him. And at some point, they're going to use the Patriot Act against him, because that was basically put in to simply go after the American people. When we started figuring out what was going on, then they would invoke the homegrown terrorist provision of the Patriot Act and start arresting people. And they've done that. They've done that. And of course, you've got 9/11 that happened, and I don't know, it was so fast. I don't know, a week or two. The Patriot Act, the law was already. I mean, they already had this law written before 9/11. It was ready to bring out. And if you remember I think there were two senators or two congressmen. I don't recall their names right now, but coincidentally, they got sent anthrax in the mail. And that was a message. Hey, you're going to go along with this. You're going to pass this. And of course they did. And with that, whenever the deep state does these kinds of things, it's not kill two birds with one stone. It's kill 50 birds with one stone. They institute all kinds of things with this. You see sometimes the main objective, but there are 100 other objectives that they stick in there. Just like when they pass a law, and the law could be written in 20 pages, but it's 1,000 pages because they stick in all this crap that nobody reads. I mean, Nancy Pelosi's famous words before Obamacare was passed is, "Oh, we'll just pass it and then we can read it later." Right, Nancy, that's really good representation for the people. And of course, the senators, the congressmen, they don't represent the people. They represent the people who put them there and the people who pay them, because you got to look at how can someone that makes $175,000 a year and their net worth is $200,000 when they go in, and 5 years later their net worth is $10 million. Now, how does that happen? Well, we're seeing it in real time. And so this is just the beginning of the transition back to the republic. This is what I would call the disclosure process. If everybody's paying attention, every single American taxpayer that's looking at this should be getting upset with the way in which their government has been run. I mean, it's ridiculous. So this is a disclosure process. At some point when Musk gets finished with the with the audit essentially. And I can't wait till they go to Fort Knox. I can't wait I'm hoping they're going to be able to get into the Federal Reserve, because Ron Paul, God bless him, has been trying to audit the Federal Reserve for years. I don't know if that's going to be possible, but everything else is going to be audited. And I guarantee you it's going to get worse when they get into the DOD, when they get into the Medicare, Social Security. I mean, it's going to get worse. They're taking it slow to get everybody used to the shock that they're going to get later. Now, when they go through this and they get this disclosure process finished, then the arrests will happen. And then once they make the arrests, they will get the people that have been impeding the transition back to the Republic. They get them out of the way. Then the Republic will come in. And we're hoping that it's July 4th of next year. I mean, the timing seems to be something close to that. And, the majority of the people in the United States, I don't know what percentage that would be, but it's probably not a very high percentage, are even aware that their government is nothing but a corporation that has contracted with the people to provide government services. It's that simple.
Wonderful news. But I have few questions from this. We will go a little bit longer into this topic, because what came to my mind after that is this. In 1985, I don't know if my viewers, I think some of you recall, in 1981, in Poland, where I currently am, not forever, we had martial law that lasted for 2 years, I believe. And in that time, we had in power general. His name was General Wojciech Jaruzelski. Apparently, in 1985, he went to New York City, to the Rockefeller Center, to meet with Rockefeller, who, again, apparently came down, which he didn't do often, with the elevator to greet him. And what happened during this meeting? This is all conspiracy, everyone, okay? So, don't believe it, right? They signed an agreement, and Poland became signed under US corporation. I have a number here. I'm not going to read you because, why would you care? CIK 507931. So my question here is this, Paladin. If Trump restores the republic, what does it mean to all other countries that are registered under that corporation as a corporation? Here comes my ignorance, because I don't really know how this is structured. So it's not a professional question, but I think you know what I'm trying to ask you. What will this mean for every other country that is also registered under US corporation?
Well, I think I'm not sure what the correct legal answer to that is, but what I would like to say to you and your audience, especially in Europe and all over the world that's outside the United States, this is your opportunity to watch what's going on here and to put pressure on your government and on your representatives to do the same thing in your country that we are doing here. Because I think all of the rest of the world looks to the United States because we're the beacon, the shining beacon on the hill. Well, in reality, we're probably the biggest criminal in the world when you break it all down. So once things start deteriorating here from the corporate standpoint, that's going to provide opportunities for every single country out there who has been under our control. I could use another term, but I won't. But who has been under our control, to then go to their representatives, their government, and demand the same thing, that they be set free. So I think it's going to create a chain reaction. And my cohort, who rides shotgun with me on my live streams, Lady Justice, wanted me to mention this and hit on it today, because your audience, I know you have a worldwide audience, I'm sure. And she wanted me to not miss the opportunity to say that, because everybody that is out there, they need to take part in this. They need to participate. So I don't know the nuances. I don't know the details of the situation there in Poland or many other countries, but I know it's up to the people. The people have to fight back. I mean, this whole thing with the um, the control structure of the world is it's kept a big secret. And the reason it is because if we ever found out what they are doing and how evil they are, they'd all be hanging from the nearest lamppost. Okay. And I'm talking about pedophilia. I'm talking about everything that they've done, and it's interesting because George Bush was doing an interview back, I don't remember how long ago, but anyway, and I don't even remember the subject matter. But what he said was this: he said, if they ever found out what we did, they'd hang us up from the nearest tree. And he was right. That's exactly what would happen, because it is so evil that people don't have any idea how bad it is. And I'm talking about politicians, I'm talking about business people, I'm talking about sports people, I'm talking about celebrities, because they're all part of it. And, that's the thing about the Epstein Island files. I mean, that's simply a Mossad blackmail operation. And, there, all the things that we know, we're aware of the 14 and 15-year-old girls, the underage girls. Well, I got news for you. It's going to be victims are going to be 4 and 5 and 6 years old. And I'm a private investigator, and I unfortunately have had cases involving this, and it's sickening. And what I can tell you is I have a hard time every Halloween night because I know what goes on. And I don't, I know you don't want me to go into detail, and I won't, but I can assure everyone it's disgusting. It's things that that you wish you could forget, but you can't, because it's so evil. Just, it's unbelievable. So I think everybody, just to get back to your question, I think everyone in every country has to take responsibility for their own situation, and they need to use our example and what's going on here to, they need to parlay that into their own country so they can get their freedoms back too. And I think that's, without knowing the details with other countries, that's about the best I can give you. I know it's a general, vague answer, but you're more familiar with your government and how it runs and where the corruption is than I am. And so I think you just use us as an example and demand the same thing. There's when Doge first got started, social media in the United States, I mean, there were people that would post on social media, "Hey, can we get Doge to come to California and do an audit of California? Can we get him to come to New York and do that? Can we get him to come to Illinois?" And so I think that the blueprint that everybody needs to implement is we're doing it right now. So I think if you go to your representatives and say, "Hey, we need full transparency," it's going to reveal the same kinds of things that we're seeing with Doge.
Thank you. I will play in a second a short video with Elon Musk. This is from the interview that he recently gave on Joe Rogan. It's pretty interesting clip. But before I do this, I want to ask you this. Is this new financial system that I believe will be implemented, is this the Trump's card, or he has more than one card that he will play with?
Well, that's a good question. Trump was approached. I used to know who was in the meeting. I used to know when it was. I know it was back when Obama was president, but Trump was approached to do that and to become president and he was assured that there would be backing, there would be people behind him, there would be people supporting him, because in reality, the president of the United States, or the president of any country, the head of any country's government, is probably about halfway down the food chain. The people who really control the world are in the shadows. You never see them, but the presidents are actually they're the puppets, and the puppet masters are in the shadows. So when they approached Trump, they assured Trump that he would have the backing, he would have the support that he needed to get this done. So when you say Trump and the Trump card, I think what you're going to see is um, more transparency, because that would be the Trump card. And I believe that once we get all of that handled, because we've got to eventually get to the bankers, because we can't have a new financial system and have the same bankers, because they're going to steal the same money over and over and over again. That's what our White House report. I mean, we talked about the global settlements, which I can't go into detail about that, but there was Leo Wanta with 4.5 trillion that Bush stole from him. There was Tropos with 700 trillion or 700 billion that was transferred to the United States, and it just got lost in the system, and nobody would look into it. It got stolen. Ed Falcone, $400 million that he was going to put into a trading program that was going to fund the rebuilding of New Orleans after Katrina, and Miami after a hurricane there. I mean, and everything that we exposed, it was all humanitarian projects that got hijacked in the system. So we need a new system, and it's going to be it's going to be backed by assets. And because right now, I mean, if you the official word on the United States currency, it's backed by the full faith and credit of the United States. I don't know about you, but that does not give me a warm feeling when I hear that. It's backed by nothing. It's backed by nothing. And we have to do something very quickly. And that's why Trump is working at light speed to do this, because our debt it's approaching 37 trillion. Our GDP, annual GDP, is 27 trillion. I mean, things are upside down. It's not balanced. And what the deep state wants to do, what the bankers want to do, is they want to bankrupt us. And if they bankrupt us, they are going to come after our retirement, our social security savings, our bank accounts, our homes. They're going to confiscate everything, because they're going to say, hey, we got all this debt. You guys are going to have to pay us. So they're going to confiscate everything. So I know some people are upset because some people are losing jobs. They're upset for various things. The immigrants aren't able to come in and have a better life and that kind of thing. But you got to pull yourself back and look at the big picture, because everybody is going to be in the same boat if we don't get this fixed. So I think to answer your question, I'm not sure there is a particular Trump card, but I believe, just to give you a little quick story, I think if you recall, Trump basically exposed the Obama birth certificate issue back in 2012. Well, this was Trump sort of dipping his toe into the political arena to start the transition from the businessman in New York that we all knew him for, to get into the politics. And of course, we all know that Obama, well, I guess maybe not all of us know, but Obama was born in Kenya. We put his birth certificate, his real birth certificate.
Adopted, right? Paladin. He was adopted by that white woman, right?
Well, that I don't know. But anyway,
or maybe trafficked. Maybe trafficked.
Yeah, it's hard to say. But the interesting part about that is that we found out that before Bush Jr., and I refer to, he's not really Junior, but if I refer to a Bush, either George H.W. Bush or George W., I'm going to refer to Senior and Junior rather than say their whole name. So Junior, before the end of his term, sent an envoy to Kenya to ask to see Obama's birth certificate. Well, they gave it to him. Well, the envoy took off with it. And this is a matter of record, because there used to be video out there. I don't know if it's still out there. It's probably been deleted by now. But anyway, there was someone that went to Kenya to do the same thing as a reporter. And there was a Kenyan official that told the story, and he said, Well, we can't show it to you because it's not here. Okay, which indicates at one point it was there. And if it was there, then that means he was born there. And of course, his brother, who's on social media, has put out copies of his birth certificate. I don't know how many times. I mean, he tells the story. And, his name was, before he became prominent in the political arena, his name was Barry Soetoro. Well, it got changed to Barack Obama. Well, the reason that did that is because now, if you want to go back and look up Barack Obama, it's only going to go back so many years. But if you look up Barry Soetoro, you're going to see all kinds of things. I mean, we've already seen the ID from the California, was it Occidental College or one of the colleges in California? His picture ID that shows him to be a foreign student. It says right on the ID. So, and Obama was groomed from a very, very early age to be the president. I mean, that's just the way they do it. But our presidents, all of them are controlled, except Trump. Trump's not controlled in the same way that all of the rest of them are. But they're all controlled. They're all blackmailed. I mean, I hate to admit this, but when I first started as a PI, I worked for a guy who had, and that's a whole nother story too, how he got the PI business. But anyway, he worked for the politicians. So, there were a local party let's say they'd go to a weekend retreat at a motel. Back then they probably weren't what they are now, but anyway, they would go to a motel and for the weekend, and they would have their meetings and all this kind of stuff. And so we'd have targets. Our boss gave us targets, and so we'd pay off the front desk to get a room beside the target. We would take a drill and drill a hole through the wall. We would stick a
Baby drill.
yeah, drill, baby, drill. And then we would stick a pinhole lens through there. And then our boss, he knew some prostitutes, and he would pay the prostitutes. Okay, so here's the scenario. It's late at night, and the target has gone out, and they've had their meetings, and then they've gone to dinner, and they've gone to the bar, and they've had some drinks, and he goes back to his room, and he calls up his wife and talks to her and tells her good night. And there's a knock on the door. It's a prostitute. And she works her way in, and you can imagine the rest. And of course, we're sitting there in the room right beside it, and we hook it up to the television so we can watch it live, and we're tape recording it. And then there's your blackmail material. Now, that's one way they do it, to blackmail the politicians. Another way they do it is just to give them bribes and pay them. And of course, the main thing with, well, I won't go there with Obama. There's an obvious one with Obama, and I'll just give you a hint. Joan Rivers told us what it was.
Okay, so here I want to ask you before we continue. I see the comment from someone. Actually, I want to bring my personal story before we go into this comment. This is true story. I mean, every story I share is true, but this is how life works. Before I moved to New York, I was still living in Las Vegas. I had this dream to live in Manhattan and work for United Nations, believe me or not. Can you imagine? I didn't know much in that time. I thought it was a good place, humanitarian, and so on. So I went to New York on a tour by myself. I bought a ticket, went to United Nations, wanted to see the building. And when I was in cafeteria buying whatever I was buying, a guy behind me offered to pay for that coffee or something. And I refused, but he insisted. So I said, thank you. And we started to talk. And then we sat down by the table, and it happened to be that he was one of the ambassadors who was working there. And as we went on with this conversation, and just to say, it was a good guy, like literally good, decent person, because not everyone is evil there, even though they have their own little church, right? We know downstairs. So what happened is, to speed up the story, I met the ambassadors and I don't know how you call it, the people who were part of, it was an organization that was called IMSAM. What they were doing, well, now I would question every freaking thing, but at the time I didn't know. They were focusing on malnutrition and spirulina project for those poor little African children in Kenya. And when that was taking place, they were collaborating with brother of Obama. Yeah, that's right. In Kenya. It's a small world. And I remember one day I was invited to that gala. I flew from Las Vegas because I worked for Chanel at that time, so they thought like I'm loaded or something, but I was just working for Chanel. I was at that gala, these beautiful round tables, and they brought a sheikh or someone like that from Saudi Arabia, I think, or Kuwait or Qatar, God only knows. And now when I think back, Paladin, when I think back about all of this, connecting the dots, I'm thinking, what the heck was going on there? Not only they were related to Obama's family, that was connection with those poor, starving children. And then we had this very, very wealthy sheikh, one of the richest men apparently in the time from Middle East. Now when I think back, I'm like, how did I, that's how life is. That's how it is. You end up in those places, but now when I look back, anyway, why do you think people cannot imagine that Trump is not compromised? Why they think that he's compromised?
Can you be specific on? Are you talking about Russia? Who are you talking about?
No, that he's controlled, that Trump is controlled. Why do you think so many people cannot think that actually there is someone who is not bought or compromised, that there is someone who actually maybe genuinely wants peace in the world and better future for humanity? Why you think it's so hard for people to even think like that? Like they think he's like everyone else, like he's one of them.
Well, I would attribute that to the media, to the CIA-controlled media. They have turned everybody against Trump, and the way they do that is, all this is they paint the picture that all this that Trump's doing is for Trump's own personal benefit. It's going to enrich Trump, and they are even heightening that with Elon Musk. Oh, Musk he's got all these contracts with the government, blah blah blah, all these kinds of things. Well, the interesting thing is it's like, you see where Trump has got Musk on board, he's got Tulsi Gabbard on board, he's got RFK Jr. on board. All these guys, all these people, these three used to be Democrats. The left loved Musk when he was a Democrat because of the electric cars. They loved him. Well, he changes, he switches, and now they hate him. And now it's all these things. And there I know there's some people in my circle who, as far as they're concerned, the jury is still out on Musk, but you got to look at Musk. I mean, the guy is he's sending rockets into space, and he's landing them so they don't have to go into the ocean, and you lose the whole rocket. They come back to the launching pad and slow down and get grabbed by the launching pad. And NASA has been in business for how many years, and they can't do that. He's got Starlink, he's got Neuralink, he's got Tesla. I mean, this guy is a genius, and here he is working for free, as Trump is working for free, to try to turn around the United States, to try to save the United States. And the thing about Trump is, and don't take this wrong, I think a lot of it is ego driven. I think Trump wants to go down as the greatest president in the history of the U.S. And if he saves us and he puts us back into the republic, he probably will be. In my opinion, so far up to this point, John F. Kennedy is the greatest president we've ever had because he gave his life and he knew he was giving his life when he did what he did. If you listen to Kennedy's speeches, he's telling us the secret society speech, the speech about bringing peace. He was telling us in his own way what was going on. And at the time, it was, a lot of it was going over everybody's head. But if you go back and listen to them, they are so poignant for what's going on today. I mean, he was hitting the target 60 years ago. So I don't think Trump is. I think that, I mean, Trump's got support. He's got backing, but he's not. He's not being controlled. Trump is going in there as president, and he's doing what needs to be done. He's using the executive powers given to him by the Constitution to do what he's trying to do. And of course, if you anybody that's in the United States and they took government in high school, they should know the difference between the executive branch, the judicial branch, and the court or the Congress. I mean, the separation of powers is there. And the president is the head of the executive branch, which means he can hire and fire. He can do all kinds of things because he is the CEO, essentially. So, whatever Trump's doing, I think Trump is using the power that the presidency has been granted under the Constitution to do what he needs to do. Now, there are people in the background. There are people that are going to be helping Trump, assisting Trump, supporting Trump. But Trump is using the power that he's been granted as the president to do what needs to do. And I go back to my original comment. How can people fight transparency? How can they not be for him to expose the corruption that's going on? I mean, all of us pay taxes. It's my tax dollar too. And I don't understand why people are upset, but the media has programmed everybody. Well, not everybody, but they've programmed a lot of people. All they got to do is sound the dog whistle, and Trump is this, and Trump is that, and Trump is this, and Trump is that, and and of course, then the Democratic leaders get up there and do their little thing, and say Musk is this and Musk is that, and Trump is this and Trump is that, and of course, their followers repeat it, and so it becomes it just becomes a situation that's unfortunate because these people that don't understand what he's doing are the ones who have enabled the theft of the United States, and that's the sad part. And even if I
Thank you.
knew even if I knew who was behind Trump and I have an idea, I mean, I know some of it, wouldn't I wouldn't be able to tell you.
But thank you so much for this. I'm very aware someone mentioned in the live chat about Musk background and upbringing, pretty much in the satanic family. I think personally, again, I'm not an expert, but I think he flipped on the good side, because even using the logic, if he was already on the side of evil, let's say, dark side, the side that liked to buy Teslas in California, he could just remain there and continue there, right? Why would he change?
Right.
That's how I feel. I mean, just using logic, like that was not, because Newsom Gruesome is still doing what he was doing. So Musk could be still in the same gang. But I remember during Schmovit how situation was with Tesla in California too. I remember that. So he was already not so accepted, right? It's very questionable, I think. People like look in the past, I agree, but I think something happened and he changed. I'm not saying he's perfect. I still question him. However, what he's doing right now, I think this is crucial. This is so important. I don't think it has ever been done to this extent, if any extent, like that in history. I mean, what is in Fort Knox, Paladin? Let's start with this, right? If they're gonna audit the Fed, what's going to be after that? Are they going to like remove Fed completely? What's going to happen to IRS? 3 questions in 1 question.
Well, I'll answer the last two first. The objective is to get rid of the Federal Reserve and get rid of the IRS, because the IRS taxes, we were never supposed to pay taxes. I think there was initially some taxes that were supposed to be paid, but they were supposed to be paid by government employees, and that was it. And I think that was just to support the government, which the government was supposed to be small. The founders set the government up so that most, if not all, of the important authorities, responsibilities, and rights were given to the states. The states were supposed to be responsible for everything, and the feds were just there to, like I said, protect the border, provide the military, and regulate commerce between states. You know, kind of be the referee between the states as far as trade and commerce goes. And now, excuse me, it's ballooned into a situation where, and I don't know, I'm going to sidetrack here a little bit, but I don't know if anybody is aware of the CAFRs, the CAFR, which are the comprehensive annual financial reports that every state does, every county does, every city does. Okay. And so those CAFRs, I went through the CAFRs every single, I mean, and it took hours and hours and hours, but I'm an accountant. What can I say? It's what I love to do. I love to get into the details. So I went through every single CAFR for every state, and I believe it was maybe 2017 or 2018. You want to guess how much money they get, how much revenue they get from the government, for the federal government? Just a guess, what percentage? Almost 50% comes from the federal government, okay? So here's the deal. So let's say the government has they create some grant, and they go to a state and says, hey, if you want this $20 billion, this is what you have to do. So the state says, oh yeah, we'll take the money. We'll do whatever it is you want us to do, right? And so it usurps not only the government or the sovereignty of the state, but what it does is it genders then that state to the federal government. Okay. And so if you watch and you see, Trump he had the governors of all 50 states in the White House. They were doing, I think they were having a luncheon, and he's done a lot of things on the gender, right? And he looked around and he said, is the governor of Maine here? And she says, yeah. And he says, why aren't you going to change the law, or why aren't you going to go along with my executive order? And she said, well, our state law, she said state and federal, and Trump says, well, we're federal. And he says, well, I'm going to cut your money off. Okay. So again, Trump is playing 5D chess with these guys and says, okay, you're getting all this money from the federal government. Well, and if you don't go along with what we need done, then we're going to cut your money off. And it's going to be significant. It's going to be very significant. And hopefully when he gets finished unraveling the federal monster that's out there, then that money is going to go away, and all the states then can go back to what they should be and rely on themselves, which is the way it should be. Now, I've forgotten your first question. Pardon me.
No, the most important one was really if the Fed will be audited, if it will exist, and if IRS will be removed.
Yeah.
But can I ask you here? Fort Knox. Yeah, I forgot about Fort Knox. Right.
Sorry, I get off on tangents. You'll just stop me or mute me or something. Okay, Fort Knox. I don't have any idea. But I know where most of the gold is. In the Philippines, where it's always been.
Why there?
Oh my, that's another rabbit hole. Okay. Back after World War I, there was a decision made that they wanted to consolidate a financial system that was actually really going to be backed by assets. They picked the Philippines, they picked Manila, mainly because it had, and I believe it still is, if you can look this up, but the Bank of the Philippines in Manila is the physically largest bank in the world. So it used to be, back then it was. Okay, so here's the deal. So the big countries, US, France, Germany, UK, I don't remember how many were involved with this, but anyway, they all took their assets to the Philippines to be on deposit. Okay, so now you can take an inventory of the gold. You can take an inventory of whatever assets are going to be used to back the financial system, so that you then can create the currency. Okay, so in other words, you've got a relationship between gold, like our dollar used to be, before Nixon took it off the $40 an ounce peg. It used to be $40 an ounce, let's say. Okay, so if you're saying that the dollar is worth $40 an ounce, and so you can multiply it out, however many ounces of gold you have will tell you how much currency you can put out there. Okay, but if you're on a fiat system like we are now, they can just print money and print money and print money and print money, because there's nothing to tie it to. Okay, so anyway, the Bank of Philippines was picked, I think mainly because it was the biggest building, biggest bank in the world at that time, and also they were sort of, independent or neutral or whatever you want to call it, and everybody trusted that. Okay, so all that's there, and you can research this. I mean, you'll find out some of the things. You'll find, and you may find stories about the boxes, and the boxes contain the paper that was printed that was backed up by the assets. Okay, now transition to another story. I was told by a general. Okay, this was a general, and I think he was in a position to know. We have all these stories about World War II and Pearl Harbor and what that was all about. And oh well, Roosevelt, they knew the Japanese were coming, and they let them come because they wanted to have an excuse to get into World War II. Well, this general's like, no, 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 no. He says, it still amazes me that people think that the little country of Japan would take on the big country of the United States and think they could get away with it. He says that's just ridiculous. And he said the war was going on in Europe. It wasn't going on in the Pacific. The Pacific there was hardly anything going on there. He says the war was in Europe with Hitler. I said, okay, General, what? Tell me, I know you're dying to tell me. He said, the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor to take out the American Pacific Fleet, so they had time to go to the Philippines and get the gold. Now, if you research this, you're going to find that the Japanese, as soon as they hit Pearl Harbor, invaded the Philippines. Okay, now, who did we have in the Philippines? MacArthur. What are MacArthur's famous words? I will return. He was telling the Filipino people that you better guard all the gold and all the assets, because I'm going to be back to check. Now, the Philippines is over 7,000 islands. Okay, so they took that gold, they took all those assets, and they hid them. Okay, in tunnels all over the Philippines. And a lot of that
freaking Indiana Jones, Paladin. Sorry to interrupt you.
Exactly. And I've talked to guys who have seen some of them, and they said, well, I was taking down one of the tunnels, and there was gold piled 10 feet high for as long as you could see. So that's where the gold is. And let me tell you something. There's a lot more gold in this world than what they tell you. There is a lot more gold. So when they talk about, the Nazis did the gold, here and there and all that kind of stuff, it's a drop in the bucket to the total amount. Now, I've also been told that at any one time there is 5,000 foreign agents in the Philippines looking for the gold. as I understand it, we have 2 satellites that are specifically focused at all times on the Philippines. And we were contacted at one point in time when we were doing our reports to start a bank in somewhere in Europe. I don't recall where it was. And they were going to start bringing the gold out, and they were going to take the gold back to and process it at this bank. We were supposed to handle the bank. We were also supposed to. They were also going to get all the paper in the boxes and bring it back, and we were supposed to handle all that. Now, there are stories out there. If you look hard enough, you will see stories where people have gotten a hold of this paper. And by paper, some of it's bonds, some of it's actual currency, certificates, all kinds of things. And they try to go to a bank to cash it. And the banks just freak out, right? Because actually it's good. But what they do is they arrest the guys, they arrest the people for counterfeit. Okay. So, and people never think about it. Okay. So why would they arrest somebody and charge them with counterfeiting if what they have is fake? Because that's what they say. That would be like you and I going to McDonald's and paying for our hamburger with Monopoly money. And the cashier at McDonald's gets on the phone and calls the cops and says, "Here, wait a minute. This is they're trying to this is counterfeit." No, it's not counterfeit. They'd laugh at you, right? So they do that, and what they do is they arrest the people, and then they grill them and put them in jail, and because what they're trying to do is they're trying to get all that paper in, and once they're convinced that all that paper is in, well, then they drop the charges, release the guy, and away he goes. So anyway, whenever we talk about gold, I just laugh because I've been told by a very reliable source that it's most of it's in the Philippines. So what we're going to find in Fort Knox, I don't know, but I saw a joke on social media that I got to relate. Somebody said, they need to send Geraldo Rivera with Musk, because if you remember Geraldo's big thing about opening Al Capone's vault and there was nothing there. So they said, well, it'd be appropriate to send Geraldo Rivera with Musk when they go to Fort Knox. Honestly, I have no idea what's there. I can tell you another story about the gold. When Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State, China was demanding to be paid in assets for all their investment, all their, they buy all of our, well, they used to, they don't as much anymore, but they buy our bonds and our treasury bills, and that's basically a loan. What we sell those treasury bills, and that's we're borrowing money is what that is. Well, anyway, China said, you got to pay us back. You got to give us something. Don't give us more currency because it's useless. Well, anyway, so they sent them a shipment of gold, and the Chinese got it, and they drilled it, and it was tungsten. It was gold painted tungsten. So as far as the gold goes, who knows?
But that's few things here. That will mean that the price of gold will be reevaluated, because the price of gold that we are seeing right now is not accurate, right? So what would this mean for precious metals? And also, I really want to ask you about this before we go to JFK. And actually, it's because it's really all connected. I want to go into Vatican, and there is gold too, right? Or was, and many other things. But let me ask you this about the new monetary system. How much you can share about this? Is there going to be, and I will say it, I think we talk about it in private before we started the live stream, but a while ago, I don't remember exactly how many years ago, and I'm not the only one who came across this, but there were images of dollars that were already existing, and they looked very different from the dollars that are in circulation right now. So it's not a treasury note, right? It's another form of dollar. It's a new dollar. And I remember one of those actually had image of JFK on it. So is this still going to be the form of money that people will be using? Is there a new dollar that will be introduced and replaced that evil pyramid system? Is it going to be backed by gold? A lot of questions here, but is there anything you can really tell us about this? I really would like to know, where is this going with the dollar?
Yeah, the dollar that we have now, some of our guys have said, the Rothschilds and Rockefellers are going to have plenty of paper to wallpaper their basements. So that means the old money that we're using right now is going to be useless. And and all you have to do, I mean, I've done this over the years. This is my favorite thing to do. I ask somebody if they've got if they've got some currency on them. They say, yeah. I said, take it out and turn it over and look on the back and tell me what it says. And it says note. I said, now, if you don't understand what note means, look it up in a financial dictionary. But note is the same thing as debt. It's debt. So we just trade paper. We're like trading notes of debt around to pay our bills. It's not currency. It's not cash. It's debt. So to answer your question, yes, the new currency, the new system, everything will be asset backed. I don't know the details. And by assets, I'm talking about precious metals, gold, silver, and it depends on what kind of assets a country has, because some countries don't have gold. They've got other minerals. They've got other assets that they can use to back their currency. And so to answer your question, yes, there will be new currency. It will be asset backed because that's the only way that you control the currency. And while we're on this subject, they talk about inflation. Inflation is not it's not inflation, it's interest. It's the interest on those dollars that we continue to pay and continually pay because the Federal Reserve tells the Treasury you're going to print this many dollars, and then they charge the Treasury interest for us being forced to use that as currency. Okay, so it's like blackmail. Now, at one point in time, way back in, I'm not sure when it was, maybe in the 90s, not sure. Anyway, before, and believe it or not, Alex Jones is the one who blew this one up. And you guys are familiar with the formation of the European Union. Okay, well, that was a model. There was going to be the North American Union. That was North America, Canada, and Mexico. There was going to be the South American Union, the Asian Union, the African Union, the Middle Eastern Union. I think there were going to be 7 of them. And they were going to create those unions so that there would be currency. Each union would have their own currency, as there is with the euro. Now, the UK still uses the British pound, but most of the countries within the euro are going to use the euro. Okay, so that was the model. And then when they had those unions created, then they were going to fold them all into one. That was what is known and was going to be known as the One World Order. Okay, now I know a guy who was in a bank during that time frame, and he saw in a bank in the vault stacks of stacks of currency on a pallet, and it was the new North American currency, and it was called the Amero, and it was a different currency. I mean, it wasn't the dollar; it was a different currency. Now, believe it or not, Alex Jones, he started yakking about the trans whatever highway that was proposed to be built through Texas. And it was going to be on the interstate in the median of the interstate of 35, which runs north and south. And it was going to be, I think it was going to be 8 lanes in each direction. And it was going to connect Canada through the United States to Mexico, because the borders between US and Canada and US and Mexico were going to go away. We were going to be all one big country. Well, he exposed that, and that killed that whole thing. And I think this was, now that I'm thinking about it, I think Junior was president. So that would have been in the 2000s at some point. But to answer your question, yes, we are going to see new currency. Yes.
All right. So I might be very off with this, or I might not be very off with this. But looking at the last 2 days, including today, I'm referring to Zelensky visiting President Trump and interesting interaction at the Oval Office. Referring to Zelensky exiting the White House and then flying, which I don't think it's him, it's another Zelensky, but let me not sidetrack, to UK. All this gathering of the schmucks together. As I'm watching all of this unfolding, my thoughts are that Trump is using Zelensky to bring down the city of London. So my question here for you is this. Is the head of the snake, as we look at this triangle, and everyone pretty much knows what I'm referring to. So we have this triangle, which is the monetary power, the spiritual power, and the military power. So we have Vatican, we have the city of London, and we have Washington, D.C. So Paladin, is the head of the snake the city of London or something else?
Oh boy, that's a good question. I think in the whole scheme of things, the of those three, the City of London and the Vatican are probably a little bit higher up than DC. DC, if you look at the history of the world, DC is the latest part of that tripod to join the party, and DC is simply the enforcement arm and the police of that. Now, if we want to talk about Ukraine, the United States, the CIA went in and performed a coup in Ukraine in 2014 and put in their own guy. Ukraine was working on trying to get their sovereignty back when Trump blew the whistle, sort of. And Biden, Joe Biden's famous thing, well, I told the prosecutor that I told him that if they didn't get rid of that prosecutor, we weren't going to give them the $2 billion or whatever it was. And he says, well, by God, they did it. And an hour later or whatever it was, they did it. And that clip has been out there for a long time. Okay, let me tell you, wow, another rabbit hole. Okay, Ukraine, the reason Putin went into Ukraine is, for those of us in the United States or in Europe, think about the enemy being your next door neighbor. Okay. And Putin knew that. Putin knows that it's the CIA. Okay. And there's Nazis there. The Republican Party is the Nazis, the Democrat Party are the communists. So the Nazis were in there and they've got biolabs and Putin's gone in there and gotten rid of a lot of the biolabs. They do a lot of child trafficking through Ukraine. They do the adrenochrome laboratories. And so, Putin was just like, I'm not going to put up with this. I'm going to, and he also, there were also Russians in certain parts of Ukraine and he needed to go in there and get them out. Okay. Well, Zelensky is nothing but a puppet. If you recall in 2019, Trump talks about his phone call with Zelensky and he said, hey, why don't you take a look at Biden's? Well, it was almost the next day Congress starts impeachment, right? Well, the reason for that is because another thing they use Ukraine for with the oil business is they launder money to pay the politicians in the United States. Now, this is going to go down another rabbit hole, which I'm not going to have time to go into, but it has to do with the Howard Hughes estate that was stolen by, drumroll, Senior, George Bush Senior. Okay. Now, the reason I know this is because the person that was involved with that on the periphery, and what they did was they took a person named Hughes, and Bush took him around and introduced him to banks and represented that he was the heir to the Hughes fortune. And he convinced the banks that this was the case, so that the banks then, all the Hughes fortune got transferred to him. Of course, on the accounts was other trustees that actually, in fact, had control of those accounts. And the Hughes person who was doing this he didn't even realize what was going on until a few years into it, and he realized he was getting screwed out of all this money that he was supposed to be getting because it wasn't going to him. Well, anyway, part of that is, and I'm sure everybody remembers Burisma, which is an oil company which is affiliated with the Howard Hughes oil, okay, in Ukraine. So the reason that everybody, the politicians, got all upset was because Trump was going to cut off the gravy train from all the money laundering that was going to come to pay them their bribes. That's what that was all about, okay? Okay, so it's still about that. Now, Putin's reason for going in, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Putin's a hero. I'm just saying that, Putin's one of those guys that wants to protect Russia. And so he sees he sees the opportunity to go in there when Biden's in office. And of course, the bio labs and all the child trafficking was going on when Trump was there, but it got ridiculous when Biden it just got out of control. So he sends in his troops to do that. So now what we've got, and excuse me, Zelensky is nothing but a puppet. And so Zelensky is caught because, and I don't know if people know this, but there's a picture of his ambassador who was in that meeting in the White House, and she's just shaking her head. Well, there's there's a PM already in Ukraine. I don't know who it is. I don't know what PM stands for. It must be somebody in their Congress or Senate or whatever has already introduced articles of impeachment to get Zelensky out. And it's interesting because the media call Trump a dictator. Well, Zelensky is the dictator. He's the one that's suspended. He's suspended elections. Zelensky is the one that's done that.
Yes, but let me ask you here: when you look at what's going on in Europe right now with the puppet, I call him Schmuck, being there. What do you make out of it?
Who do you mean schmuck? There's so many.
Zelensky is Schmuck to me. So he is in UK now. There is a special urgency meeting. The so-called leaders arrived from European countries to present full support for Ukraine. And to me, all of this looks staged almost. There are two ways I look at it. Either they are that crazy and they just think that they want to continue with this and will be completely destroyed by Russia ultimately, or this is all scripted in a way and Trump is playing all of this, bringing down European governments pretty much, and including the king, I should say the king, and the city of London, because this is all connected. What do you make out of this? Zelensky flying to London after being kicked out from the White House.
Well, I mean, you're talking about King Chuck, I assume, which, yeah, okay, and he doesn't really have very much power. It's all symbolic, it's not that much. But anyway, no, I think what we saw in the White House was real. Zelensky, I mean, the guy wore a tracksuit to the White House. And it was just, I mean, and Trump said something to him outside the White House when he got out of his vehicle, that brought him there. He asked him, made some comment about what he was dressed. I mean, Zelensky just came in. I mean, I have never seen in all my years of being alive and all the photo ops in the Oval Office of the visiting dignitaries, I have never seen anything like the disrespect that Zelensky showed Trump. And I think that Trump really wants peace. I think he really does want peace. There have been times when he's talked about that, and he reminds me of JFK in his speeches about bringing peace. And I think he really does want peace. He wants to bring peace. But Zelensky is going to have to get out of the way. So now Zelensky came and he figures, okay, Biden's given me all this money and all these military, all this military capabilities. So I'm just going to go to Trump and get the same thing. I mean, Trump wants to do a deal, but I'm going to go there and try to appeal to Trump and do it in front of the American people and all my allies in Congress to try to get more money. Well, it didn't work. Trump kicked him out. They didn't even agree to the mineral deal. So now he's got to go back to Europe and try to deal with Europe. Now Europe sits there and they back Zelensky, but they say, well, it's because they're afraid that Russia's expansion and yada yada yada, all those things. Well, the reality of it is that, it's interesting when you see what Europe does. Europe doesn't just give Zelensky money with with no strings. They're going to give him money, but it's a loan. Well, how is he going to pay this back? He's not going to be able to. So this is, as I see this is still a developing story. And I'm sure Putin was just sitting there watching that fiasco in the Oval Office. I'm sure he just loved that. I mean, I'm sure he said, okay, finally, everybody, the world now gets to see what this Zelensky is like. And Zelensky is not calling any of the shots there. The deep state is directing Zelensky. They are telling him what to do and how to handle this. So as far as what's going on in the city of London, it's going to be interesting. But, if we get a new financial system, that's going to take care of the city of London. That's going to get rid of the Rothschilds. That's going to get rid of the Federal Reserve. That's going to get rid of all the old financial power structure in one fell swoop. They'll just be useless. And so all these countries that rely on that are going to have to come up with their own system. Now we are trying desperately to set up things in other countries so that they won't be harmed by that. But that's one of the white hats, the part of the white hats that I'm a part of, which is the financial part. That's what we have been focused on for about 5 years.
Do you want to say more about it, or you can't?
No, that's probably enough for right now. I was going to talk to one of my guys and see what I could say. I couldn't get a hold of him, and so but if you want to do another show at some time in the future, maybe I'll get some more information and I'll see what is allowed, because I mean, I'm not going to say that I know special things that the other side doesn't know, but we have to be careful about strategy and, putting stuff out in the public that we don't want out there. Other things we can put out in the public because it doesn't matter, but I just want to err on the side of caution when we're talking about this, because once we flip that switch to the new system, everybody's life is going to change dramatically.
Thank you so much for this. I have a few more questions. Do you still have time for this live stream?
Sure.
Okay, so we have to go to JFK.
Oh.
Why he was killed, first and foremost?
He took on the deep state. He took on the Federal Reserve. He took on Israel. He took on everybody. Everybody.
But the main reason was because of the new financial system that he was ready to implement?
Well, about a month before he was killed, he had gone to the Philippines and signed the Green Hilton Agreement. You can look it up with Sukarno, and he was gonna get the gold out of there. He was gonna back the currency, and there's an EO that he issued, 11110, that was going to use silver to back some of the currency, and that EO that he put out there is still in the books. But JFK took on all of them. He took on all of them. And another thing that they didn't like about him was that he wanted peace. He wanted peace with Russia. He wanted peace with Cuba. I should have researched this. He did a very famous speech at a college where he said something like, all of our we all breathe the same air. We all, we want our children to grow up, and it was just one of the most beautiful speeches I've ever heard. And he took on the deep state, and he was very familiar with the deep state. And so that's really what it was. I mean, there were several things, But the main one was that he wanted peace, and the deep state wanted to go into war with Russia. They wanted to go to war with Cuba. He wanted to change the financial system. He wanted to know what the heck was going on with the off-worlders, and they wouldn't tell him. I mean, there's a story about him on Air Force One coming back to Washington, and he's talking to an aide, and the aide asked him about, what do you know about the off-worlders, or I forget what the question was, but it had to do with, maybe it had to do with Roswell. But anyway, Kennedy started crying because he said, they won't tell me what it is. They won't tell me. So he knew that there was a bigger power structure that was bigger than him out there. He knew it, and they were afraid of him. And the whole deep state at that point, they were afraid of him because Joe Kennedy was a very powerful guy in that he was like King Midas. Everything he touched turned to gold. He was a head of a bank when he was 24. He was the head of the SEC. He was the ambassador to the UK during World War II. He went to Hollywood and he bought and sold movie studios, made movies. I mean, and he owned the trademark. The Kennedy family owned the trademark in Chicago. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but the trademark has its own zip code. It's so big, and they owned that for years. And what Joe wanted was, he wanted all of his kids to go into public service. And he wanted the Kennedy family, he wanted to create a trust for the Kennedy kids so that they would not have to work for a living. And, one of the stories, I mean, we all know now that, Trump didn't take a salary his first term. He's not taking one now. Musk isn't taking one now. Well, JFK was a congressman, then he was a senator, then he was a president. So that was 1948, and then in 52 he was a senator, and then in 60 he was elected president. He never took a salary for those 15 years he was in the government. And that was what Joe wanted. Joe didn't want his kids to have to take money, a salary, to work, but he wanted them to be dedicated to public service. So, and the deep state was concerned because they thought, okay, if JFK gets in and he gets 2 terms, Bobby's going to be next. He's going to get 2 terms, and then Ted's going to get 2 terms. We're talking about 24 years. We're talking about a quarter of a century, and they wanted to nip that in the bud right away. So they did. They did. And JFK was going to make he's going to make all kinds of changes. I mean, he was, and I just learned this not too long ago because I am in contact with someone in the family, that he was going to do basically what Trump is doing now. He was going to fire Johnson. He was going to fire Hoover. He was going to go after everybody. But he needed to get in. He needed to get reelected and get his second term. And they knew that. They all knew that. That's why they had to kill him. I mean, they started, I don't know if you know what the U-2 flights were, those high altitude planes that were up at like 40 or 50,000 feet that they used to spy on Russia. Well, they were using the U-2 planes in the end of 1961 over Daley Plaza to pick a place to assassinate him. That's how early that started.
So here a few questions I have. Do you think that deep state is not as powerful at this moment as it was in JFK time? It's weakened. Do you think that, or do you know what is the involvement of Israel in his assassination? And how important is for those files, JFK files, to be fully revealed? Will they be fully revealed? Will people know everything what happened?
Okay, I'm sorry. What was your first question? Oh, the deep state. Well, in some
How
areas,
powerful is it?
yeah, in some cases, they're more powerful because of the weapons that they've developed. Um, but then, to a certain degree, they're less powerful because people are more aware of them at this point, if that makes any sense. Um, I think they're on the run now with Trump, and I think Trump has a support system and backup, because I always felt one of Trump's weaknesses was it's going to be hard to keep him alive because he's got such a big family. He's got kids, he's got grandkids, and they can get you if they want to get you, they can get you. But that's been offset, and this been offset by people that are above the public. So, and I don't know exactly who those people are, and if I did, I probably couldn't talk about them anyway. Now, as far as JFK goes, there were two operations going on that day. One was there was a team there that was supposed to make it look like there was an assassination. They were going to fire shots and miss on purpose. And I'm not sure, but I believe that JFK was aware of that. And then there was another team that assassinated him. So the event, there was probably, I'm going to say probably 12 to 15 shots fired, where the Warren Commission says there were three. And one of the shots that missed hit that bystander down by the overpass, which the story was always going to be that there were three shots because they planted the three shells in the book depository on the 6th floor. And of course the police found those, and okay, here's three shells, so there were three shots because Oswald was the only shooter. So when it became known that James Tagg was the bystander down under the underpass who got hit, one of the bullets hit the pavement and knocked up a piece of pavement, and it hit him in the cheek and started bleeding. Well, so that threw off the whole three bullet thing, because they couldn't account for all the wounds. I mean, Connally had 6 wounds, and JFK actually got hit at least 3 times, maybe 4 times. So they couldn't account for all the wounds, which is then hence they created the magic bullet theory, which Jerry Ford, who was on the Warren Commission, helped come up with that. He moved the back wound up from the middle of the back essentially up to the neck to accommodate the through and through wound that they said that JFK had, so that they could account for all 6 wounds that Connally had. And then, and of course, we all know what happened to Ford. He became the only unelected president we've ever had in our life, or our history. And then the attorney who wrote up the magic bullet theory was Arlen Specter, who was just a attorney on the Warren Commission, and he became the senator of Pennsylvania. So, this is how it's done. And of course, some of the guys that were involved in Dallas, Howard Hunt, Frank Sturgis, some of the Cubans were there. Well, coincidentally, they were the same guys that got popped at Watergate at the break-in. Now, for the files, go ahead.
Was it ordered? Can I ask you here, because was it ordered by Israel? And we froze.
Well, I'm not sure I can. I know. I'm thinking about how I can say this. I ordered.
All right, let's not answer, right? Because it means high chance, yes.
Okay. Well, it wasn't.
How important are those files, and will they be redacted, or are we gonna see them? What's gonna happen with that?
Well, that's a good question. I don't really know. I've been told that the CIA planted false information in those files years ago, so that every president that ever took a look at them would say, "Oh my, we can't release this." Now, I don't know specifically what that is. I could make a few guesses. One is something to do with Russia, where Russia was behind the assassination, and it would come out and the American people would be in an uproar. Let's go after Russia, this kind of thing. But it's something that the CIA planted in those files a long time. Well, I shouldn't say long time because that's relative term. Sometimes long time is 5 years to some people and 20 years to somebody else. So I just know that there are some planted files by the CIA. Um, they've released files over the years. I mean, a lot of the stuff has been redacted. But what they're trying to protect with all of this is they're trying to protect that the CIA, the FBI knew more about the assassination than what they represented to the public, which would then create an issue where their credibility, which is, it's on the outs now, their credibility would totally be lost. For example, at the time that JFK was killed, Oswald was an FBI informant. There's a file out there called, I don't know if it's a 105 file, it's some number, and Oswald's name on it. And what that indicates is that Oswald was an informant for the FBI. Oswald also, when he went to Russia, was a CIA agent. He was sent by the CIA to go to Russia to try to, be a double agent. Of course, that didn't work. And poor Oswald. I mean, he was just a kid. He was 24 when this all went down, and he came from a broken home. And he's the model for the people that the CIA get into their organization and become agents because they come from broken homes. And what they do is the CIA then becomes their family and they have undying loyalty to the CIA. So Oswald, during this whole operation leading up to the assassination, he thought he was, being Mr. CIA, Mr. Infiltrator, Mr. Double Agent, and he's feeding information back to the FBI about what's going on. And they're not doing anything about it because they didn't want to do anything about it. He was going to be the patsy, and they set him up exactly. Now, as far as what's in the files, it's hard to say. I think that we're not only when the files. Let's assume that we're going to get everything on the files. What we're going to be surprised to see a lot more information than we would anticipate. That's not going to be from 1963 or 64 or 65 or 66. We're going to see some things that have been more recent, things that have happened that we're not aware of. But it's going to surprise us when we see those things if they come out. Now, as far as the redactions go, I don't know. Whenever these file releases come out or they announce they're going to come out every so often, I never get excited because it's not going to say that, Joe Smith was the shooter on the knoll and Jerry Jones was the shooter, on the overpass, and so was the shooter in the Dowtex building, and so was the shooter in the deposit. We're not going to get any of that kind of stuff. That's not going to be in there. So I mean, I know some people are excited. I think the reason that they don't come out is because it's going to show that the FBI and the CIA knew a lot more about what was going on in the associations between Oswald and Ruby and the mob and Ruby and the CIA and all that. It's going to show those associations, which they have been denying ever since, because you can't admit that, these people had any associations, because that blows up your whole single gunman theory. That goes into conspiracy. And once you go into conspiracy, that thing spins out of control. So I'm just not really, I'm not really excited. I already know what happened. And so to me, I'm just signing. It's just I don't know. I guess it's just a nothing burger to me. I mean, I'll be interested. I will have interest to see what they show us. But um, I know what happened. I know who was involved. So it's just not a big deal to me. It's not a big reveal like it's probably going to be for a lot of people.
But I believe that Robert Kennedy Jr. knows the truth.
Yes, he does. And Bobby, his brother, was running for president because he through that time, of course, at the time his brother was assassinated, he was the attorney general. He accumulated a bunch of evidence. And if he would have been elected president, he would have then prosecuted all the conspirators who were involved with his brother's murder, and that's when they had to kill him. That's when they had to assassinate him. And the thing of it is that if you go back and you look at this time frame, Lyndon Johnson was one of the most power-hungry people we've ever had in our history, and he obviously facilitated the assassination of JFK. Of course, he had a vested interest because he was going to go to prison because of all the criminality that he had committed over his time in the government. But when Bobby Kennedy announced that he was going to run is when Lyndon Johnson said, "I'm not going to run for a second term." Well, the reason is because Johnson was afraid, because he knew they were going to assassinate Bobby, and he was afraid he was going to be associated with both of their assassinations. And that's why Johnson announced that he wasn't going to run for re-election. So, I mean, it's just such a sordid world we live in. And all this has been kept from the public,
It kind of makes sense when you really think about this clearly, right? What you just said, that he didn't want to be associated with this second killing. But I referred to his son, Robert Kennedy Jr. He knows the truth, right?
Well, yeah, and he's publicly come out. I mean, the thing of it is, I mean, he's a Kennedy, and you've got JFK, you've got RFK, depending on how you look at the JFK Jr. situation. I mean, you're snake bit if you're a Kennedy. And so Junior's got to be careful what he says as far as that goes. But he's been pretty adamant, and he's been pretty vocal about his father, who was not killed by Sirhan. He was killed by his bodyguard, that Thane Caesar, who shot him in the back. And if you look at any of the pictures of RFK laying on the ground, you will see a clip-on tie laying beside him, because as he was shot, he turned and grabbed this Thane Caesar's clip-on tie and pulled it off because he knew who shot him. So yeah, I'm sure Junior knows, but he's got to be careful. He's got to be careful what he says and how much he discloses.
Yeah, and now he's against the big pharma, so that's another story. I want to play this clip with Elon Musk, and I will have one more question for you. We really went much longer than I was thinking, almost 2 hours, but let's play this, and I will ask you my last question, Paladin.
It's more than just insider trading. Like the insider trading stuff, like the stock portfolio stuff is quite trackable, but it's a lot more than insider trading.
The way they're acquiring wealth.
Correct.
And what other methods?
I mean, this is really going to get me assassinated. It's like I'm not lengthening my lifespan by explaining this stuff, to say the least. I mean, I was supposed to go back to DC. How am I going to survive? This is going to kill me for sure. In fact, I do think like it's like I actually have to be careful that I don't push too hard on the corruption stuff, because it's going to get me killed. Yeah, it's like I was actually thinking about that on the plane flight over here. It's like if I push too hard on the corruption stuff, people get desperate. It's more than just insider trading.
Okay, so why I play this? When I watched that, I was wondering. I believe he's referring to human trafficking, organ harvesting, also other things that I don't really want to talk about with you in this live stream, because that's a completely next level conversation, and I think we have to do this gradually, where people go. Let me just put this way. But how I was trying to think how you win with this, how you master this, and you come out of it as a winner. And when I thought of it, I think this new financial system is the way, because their power is not just in humans, but is still in money. So if you remove the money out of this equation, you take away a lot of their power. It's not entire power, but it's a lot of it. So my last question to you is, as Elon Musk was referring to, like you cannot push too hard, but you still have to reveal the corruption. How you think this can go forward with that?
Well, I actually think the simple question is, and I'll go back to what Bush said about if they really found out what was going on, they'd hang us up by the nearest lamppost. They've got to expose all of this, and then once they expose it, there's a you know there's a role that the people need to play. Okay, because we have got to get to the point where we are so upset, we are so uh, we're so mad about what's been going on that we physically enter the fray. And I think if there's a movie out there called Frazzle Drip. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. I know some people who have seen it. I don't want to describe it. The videos that are going to be, that symbolic white and blue temple or whatever it is on Epstein Island. Okay, well, there's about 6 or 7 levels below that, and there's video that's been taken, and that's the kind of thing that I described earlier about what goes on in Halloween. And if that stuff ever gets revealed, and all they've got to do is just show it, all they've got to do is reveal it, the people will handle the rest, because we've got them outnumbered. We've always had them outnumbered. That's our only advantage at the end of the day. We've got them outnumbered. Otherwise, out and tell us everything and say we own your ass and there's nothing you can do about it. But they can't do that because we outnumber them, and they know we outnumber them. So they've got to lie to us. They've got to, this whole thing. I mean, most of the things that we see all the time are a show. It's like a movie in essence. And all these guys are actors. I mean, you look at the news people, and these people are getting millions and millions and millions of dollars to read a teleprompter. No, they're actors, okay? And they're supposed to influence us. We're supposed to attach ourselves to, Anderson Cooper or Bill O'Reilly or whoever it is, and then everything they tell us, because we love them. We agree with one thing that they said, so therefore we want to watch them because we think that they're smart. So then it just becomes an automatic download into our head. And that's what you see with all these people that are going out there and fighting with Trump, because the media has been against Trump since he rode down the elevator in 2015. And it's like, where has common sense gone? Where has independent thinking gone? Where has critical thinking gone? Well, it's out the window because we got prescription drugs, we got fluoride in our water, we've got all kinds of things in our food, we got chemtrails, we got vaccinations. I mean, you got to hand it to the deep state. I mean, they've thought this stuff out, and they've done a very good job of dumbing us all down. And then you add the fear factor that they put into it, where when you get somebody scared of World War III, scared of this, scared of that, scared of Trump, you go into your most basic instinct, which is just simply survival. You don't think about anything else. You're not able to open your mind, expand your thinking to try to come up with solutions to these problems, you just think, how am I going to take care of myself? And one more thing, and you're probably tired of me taking one simple question and taking 10 minutes to answer it. But um, I think one of the things that everybody needs to keep in mind as we're going through this process is to try to stay true to yourself and always look inward and try to see what's, where your feelings are coming from, why you feel this way, because I think that we all need to be on the same team. People in Poland need to be on the same team as the United States, as the Russians, as the Chinese, as the Japanese. We all need to get together because we're all slaves. All of us are slaves. Okay. And that's what we have in common. They're suppressing all of us. So there's a lot of, I mean, if you think about the progress in some areas we've made technologically, and then the lack of progress we haven't made, like, for example, our automobiles. I mean, we've used the same engine for how many years? 100 years? Yet we've got computers that do all this stuff, AI that does all this stuff, but we still have an engine in a car that burns gas, uses spark plugs or whatever. I mean, it's just, it's ridiculous, but that keeps us in slavery. And so I think that's what we need to keep in mind going forward, because it's a new time, and it's time for us to stand up for ourselves, and it's time for us to fight back.
Thank you, Paladin. So Nikola Tesla will be resurrected.
Yes.
His ideas.
Yes.
Yes, we know.
Yes.
But that's another story for another conversation.
Yeah. Free energy.
Thank you. Free energy. And that's another Trump's card too, I think. Not to mention that I think his uncle was the one who had the documents, Tesla documents.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So everything kind of comes to a full circle. I would like to thank you for joining me today. It was a really long live stream for me. I'm sure for you too, for your energy and for your time. And I want to thank everyone in the audience who participated in this experience. Share your thoughts. I'm sure not everyone agrees, but I know many do. And as everything in life, some things just take time. And like you said, timing is everything. So if you want to find Paladin, just go down to the links that are there. And before we end this live stream, can I ask you, are you going to create more videos anytime soon, or you still on the pause with that?
No, we're probably going to start our live streams. I've got Lady Justice, who's always rides shotgun, so we're going to start our live streams if we can get everything together. We'll probably start those next weekend, sometime Friday night, maybe Saturday night. And I probably will start putting out some written reports on our website, whitehatsreport.com. And one thing I want to just say, and my listeners and followers have heard this before, and so I want to say this to yours. Don't take my word for anything I've said today. Do your own research, because everybody has their path, their own path to enlightenment and to discovery. And so, if I've given you hints, if I've given you some insight, that's great. But don't take my word for this. Do your own research, because that's the best way that you're going to have an understanding of it. Because I've imparted a lot of information today, but there's a lot of dots that I haven't connected, because we could do this for days and still probably not get all the dots connected. So you're going to have a lot of questions in your mind. I know a lot of the things that I've said have probably gone against the grain from the standpoint of people. This is not what people have been taught. This is not what people think. I don't talk about things that I don't understand or I don't know. If I've said something today, then it's personal knowledge that I have. As Tori likes to say, I've got the receipts. So, again, I don't expect everybody to believe me, take it at face value. but I encourage everybody to do your own research and go down your own path, because that's the way that you get to the objective, because then you'll understand it better if you do it on your own. And hopefully, if I've helped, if I've made a light bulb go on in your head, if I've done anything at all, then I'm grateful for you, Ania, for providing me this platform to impart some of this on your audience.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Before you go, before we end this, I want to just share one comment, and I want to address this comment. So one moment, let me read this first. From Texas Grown, thank you so much. This is your second donation today, I've noticed. I appreciate it. Anya, you need to see the Bohemian Grove video we took this summer, a satanic-like performance. So let me address this before we end this live stream. I have to say, that's how God works, in my opinion. God works in a mysterious way, in a beautiful way, because to me, the Shmovit time was one of the biggest blessings. This was the time when I was able to really wake up and to really dive into those topics that were very difficult to handle, very difficult to approach. For someone like myself, I'm an empath. So I had to learn how to balance my energy after coming across all those videos, Isaac Kapi. I haven't, even if I would be able to see the videos from Epstein Island, and I know there were some videos that were circulating, I would choose not to look at it, because as many of you know, once you see it, you cannot unsee it. It just stays deep in your subconscious mind and in your energy field. I don't know if it stays in your DNA, but that time gave me some awareness of what was going on, what still is going on. I hope to less extent, and I hope it will stop completely one day. But maybe because of that, I was able to balance myself and to process it, and now it's easier for me to have conversations about it or listen to someone who talks about it without being very disturbed. It doesn't mean it does not affect me, but I am very aware of things. I don't talk about all of it because not everyone is in a place to handle it, and you cannot bring those topics at once. However, like you said, I believe that it's the children who will save us and shift it all. Because when people see the truth, I don't think there will be people you can stop. And that might be very, very nasty scenario to watch. And if someone is missing a child, or more than one child, and never found that child, and then realizes what could possibly happen to that child, and we are talking about millions of people, okay? This is not like hundreds or thousands. This is V for Vendetta, and I mean it. So that's all I want to say. Those are serious conversations, and I think we have to deliver it in some stages, but the judgment day is coming, in my opinion. Thank you, Paladin, for joining me today. I really, really appreciate it.